I just don't want to learn overall how my use is.
And that's yeah. So there's lots of different things that you can do in there. So hopefully we can take this the slides, go over kind of what everything is, because of course, you know, being just a PI, depending on what type of research you do, you could use entirely different modules in here, depending on what type of approvals you need in order to be able to do your research. Should we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, I think that I don't want to hold anyone up. So.
All right. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm Molly LaRue. I'm from the Vice President for Research's Office, and I'm here to kind of give you a brief introduction to UAB's Integrated Research Administration Portal. And because UAB loves their acronyms, we fondly refer to this as IRAP. And if you have any questions, anything, if you want to focus on a topic, just let me know. I don't know if everyone could hear me a minute ago, but I called this a brief introduction, but I have over 60 slides, and that's just because it's very hard to come into a room full of researchers and know what they're going to be specifically interested in. So to begin with, we'll just kind of go over what is IRAP. So IRAP is a suite of electronic research administration modules that we purchased, or UAB purchased, from InfoEd Global. And so this is a commercially available product that UAB purchased to handle all of our research administration needs. And as we've been implementing this, and as with most implementations, it has taken a lot longer than we originally anticipated. We started this process back in 2010, and of course it's 2018, and we've done a lot of work, but there's still a lot of work left to be done. But one of the things that we've been doing while we've been doing this implementation is to, number one, try to provide a single point of entry for everything that researchers need to provide to our research administration offices. So previously, all of the research administration offices had their own software, their own methods of being able to communicate with them. You know, some of the offices required you to print out everything and walk it over to their office. Other of the offices had you fax it over. Some had you go ahead and email it in. And then, of course, all of those units, I guess they all worked in a vacuum. So none of them would communicate with the other offices, leaving the PIs or their research staff being the people who are responsible for communicating that information. And so that was one of our main points. So we're trying to decrease duplicate entries. We're providing a feedback mechanism for processing. So as we go through this, we're taking input from the campus, from the units, and hopefully addressing some of the problems that have been identified. And then one of the main things that we're trying to do is we're trying to eliminate paper. In this day and age, it's very frustrating to have to print out an IRB protocol and having to walk it over to the office. We're trying to integrate and streamline the operations of the research administration units. And as with anything, when you're integrating and streamlining, you never get it right the first time. It's one of those continuing education or continuing improvement projects. And so we're constantly working on that. And then we're also trying to make sure that our research administration units aren't a black box. We would like the researchers and their staff to be able to access information about the things that they send to the research administration units, so that you know where is it in the process, when can you expect to hear back, and those types of things. So now why should you care about IRAP? A lot of researchers, you know, the most important thing for you guys is to do your research. And unfortunately, in order to be able to do your research and do it in a manner that is safe and, you know, meets all federal guidelines, you have to do paperwork. And none of us like paperwork. But why you need to know about IRAP is because that's how you're going to be doing that research administration paperwork. So this is how you submit documentation to the various research administration units. You can track the progress of a lot of these things that you submit to the units. So instead of having to call somebody and ask them where it is, you can check it whenever you want. You know, you don't have to wait until Monday morning at 8 when one of the offices, you know, is open. If you're in clinic or something like that and you have a question about something on a Saturday afternoon, you can log in and check that out. And then also with IRAP, we provide a number of reports. And so there's a lot of information that's at investigators' fingertips that you can use for grant applications or to track your own productivity to see, you know, how many applications have you submitted, how many are active, how many are pending, those types of things. And then down at the bottom of this page, I've just kind of spelled out what our research administration units are. It's, again, a series of acronyms or an alphabet soup, but our OSP office is the Office of Sponsored Programs, and that's where you submit your grants and contracts. The Conflict of Interest Review Board office, or the CIRB, is where they look at any financial interest that you disclose and determine whether you have any conflicts with your research. The Office of the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, or IACUC, they review all research that involves animals. The Material Transfer Office is if you are going to be either sending any scientific materials outside, or research materials, I'm sorry, if you're sending any research materials outside of UAB or to another investigator inside UAB, or if you are receiving any research materials from another investigator. And then the IRB, or the Office of the Institutional Review Board for Human Use, and then the Occupational Health and Safety Office. And for researchers that have labs, they're very familiar with the Occupational Health and Safety Office, but a number of our investigators that are not as that don't have laboratories may not be as familiar with occupational health and safety, but as IRAP goes forward, we will become more familiar with it. So like I said, we've been working on IRAP for a while, so this is just kind of where we are and what we've done. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to kind of give you an overview of what all we can do in the system. And then I'd like you to just let me know what you would like me to cover today so that we make sure that the information that I provide is what you really need. So our first module that we put in the system and opened up to the campus was called Spin and Smarts. And what this is a funding opportunity search tool that has over 40,000 funding opportunities and over 10,000 sponsors. So if you're looking for any funding opportunities, this is a great tool to use. One of the other things that you can do with Spin is set up search criteria, and then whenever a funding opportunity that meets those search criteria is released, you will be notified via email. And so instead of having to constantly go out and look for funding opportunities, it pushes it into your inbox. And so it makes it very, very convenient. The next module was, of course, the Conflict of Interest module. And this module, again, is where we track everybody's financial interest and how it relates to their research projects. Then we have the OSP, or the Office of Industry Engagement module, and that's one module in the system where we have two different offices using it. If you do any industry-sponsored clinical trials or anything that requires a CDA, or a confidentiality disclosure agreement, you have interacted with the Office of Industry Engagement, possibly without realizing it. But we handle all CDAs and anything other that's grants or contracts related in that OSP module. Then we have the IACUC module for lab animal research. The material transfer module, that again is for whenever you're going to be either sending or receiving scientific materials, research materials to another investigator. And that's just to make sure that you have permission from the wherever that research or wherever that material originated to share the materials. And one thing that I like to, it's just kind of a little anecdotal story, but we have had graduate students on campus who did their research with scientific materials that had not gone through the material transfer process, and we had to pull back their publications. And so it's very important to make sure that that whenever you're using scientific or research materials that you have approval to either share them or to use them. OH&S, again, that's research safety. So this is going to be all those biosafety committee, chemical safety committee, radiation safety committee, all of those types of committees. And if you do clinical trials and you require x-rays or things like that, or you're going to be using the cyclotron for any of your research materials, you become very familiar with the radiation safety committee. And then if you're doing any like human gene therapy trials, that is where you're going to come into contact with the institutional biosafety committee. And then our last module that we went live with was the IRB and the human subjects module, and they actually went live June 26, 2017. And so a year ago, we had all of the modules in IRAP up and running that UAB is going to be using. And they, although we're not done with all of the things that we're going to be implementing, but it was just exciting to have all of the offices using the modules. All right, so this is where you guys come in. What types of research do you do? What are you interested in? Because I don't want to talk about animals if none of you have any animals.
Yeah, I do cancer research. I use animals.
You use animals, okay, all right. Do you ever?
It's not a problem just to go quickly through everything. So I pretty much know how to do ICAC. You know, it's a very bad website, by the way. It's really troubling. But I know how to use it. So
What is a bad website? The IACUC website or the system?
the system.
Okay.
Yeah, see, it's hard to, it's very hard to do things on.
Okay. All right.
I have complained to them, but I come here just want to briefly everything.
All right. So I guess we'll start with how do you access the system? So the easiest way to access it is to go to the UAB homepage, and just because technology is always challenging, I just have instructions here. I'm not going to walk through the steps. But on the UAB homepage, up at the top right-hand side, there's UAB quick links. And if you scroll or hover over that, a pop-up list will show up, and you're going to go to the admin systems page. And there's going to be a button somewhere on the page, and I wish I could tell you exactly where it is, but this is one of those pages where you guys can personalize it, so I don't know how you personalized it, but there's going to be a big green IRAP button. And if you click on that, you're going to be able to log into the IRAP system. Now, everyone at UAB who has an active Oracle appointment will be able to log into IRAP. Now, if you are changing departments, if you've got people who you're hiring and their hiring documentation hasn't been finished yet, incoming faculty, those types of people, occasionally we need to work with them to be able to allow them to log in. So there's some things that we can do to help people log in. And then, of course, if you have any collaborators or any undergraduate students, anyone at Children's that you work with that you need to be able to have access to the system, we have a way to handle that. And so that link is here. Now, what can you see in IRAP? So in IRAP, you as an investigator are going to be able to see any protocol or any projects on which you have been named. So if you are a researcher on a grant, on an IRB project, on an IACUC project, or on an occupational health and safety project, you can go in and see all of those projects. Now, you might not be able to see everything when you open up the module. So, for example, if you're an investigator on an OSP grant that isn't your grant, you will most likely be unable to open up all of the attachments where you'd be able to see the budget and things like that. But for IRB and IACUC, you'll be able to see everything that's been submitted, so you'd be able to see the protocols that you are on, and so it makes it easy for you to figure out what your collaborators have asked you to do, what you're approved to do. This is also great if you have a laboratory, because your laboratory staff will have access to be able to view all those things as well, so they know what you've been approved to do. Now, if you are a delegate for someone, and we'll go more into delegation in a minute, but you will be able to see any project or protocol on which someone that you are a delegate for is listed. So you'll be able to see all of that as well. And then on campus, we have certain departmental and divisional people who have access to be able to see everything for an entire org. So this Department of Medicine research office can see everything for everybody who works in Department of Medicine. School of Medicine can see everything as well. So we do allow kind of a top-down view for administrators or deans, division directors, and department chairs to be able to see that type of information. Now, down at the bottom, I have just a little note saying that this works for everything but the MTO module. So that's going to be the material transfer module, and that module works different than everything else. For that module, you will only be able to see records on which you are the PI, or on which you have or records that you have created. The security doesn't work the same way there. Now, this is one of the questions that we get from a lot of our researchers, and that's, do I have to log into IRAP, or can somebody else log in for me? So what I want to say first is UAB policy is you cannot share your Blazer ID password with anyone, okay? So please do not ever give anyone your Blazer ID password. And by policy, if we find out that you do, we reset your password, and then you have to go through IT. So just an FYI out there. But what IRAP allows you to do is it allows you to, as the investigator, to name delegates. And these individuals can log into the system and do things on your behalf. Now, at this point, they can submit protocols for you, they can view documents for you, they can track things for you. We currently don't have anything in the system that requires the PI to actually sign off on something, because, for example, the OSP checklist and for IRB, we still have a wet signature that gets uploaded into the system. When we go to electronic routing, where you would be able to sign off on it electronically, at that point, you would have to log in, because you cannot delegate your signature for some of those documents. And those are regulations from the federal government, for example, in OSP's case. Now, delegates are assigned on a module-by-module basis, so you can set up one delegate for IACUC, one delegate for IRB. What you can't do is you can't set up a delegate on a project-by-project basis. So if you have, 4 different IRB projects, your delegate will be able to see all 4 of those IRB projects. And so that sometimes cause a little bit of stress. Do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. I was wondering, the delegate, you had said earlier that PI could see all the funding and grants. Can the delegate also see that?
Yes, the delegate can.
Okay. And they have access to adjust everything that the PI can?
So in IRB and IACUC, you can set up a delegate to where they can only view, which would mean they wouldn't be able to change anything, they can just look. Or you can set them up to edit, which would mean they would be able to edit everything. For OSP, at this point, everything that gets sent over to OSP is sent over to them in an email, and then it gets updated in the system. There is nothing at this point that the campus can edit for the OSP module. So there are no, so at this point, there's nothing that a delegate would be able to change there. Now, when we go into starting to use a module, the OSP module, and use what we're going to call proposal development, which is where you'll be able to fill out the checklist online, then your delegates with edit capabilities would be able to change that. So, but again, it was the last step is almost always going to be the PI approving something before it gets submitted, and so that's where that that checks and balances is. Now, I will say we had a lot of questions and a lot of concern about delegation and them having edit access and things like that when we first went live with IRB and IACUC and the Material Transfer Office. And to date, we have only had one example of an investigator contacting us saying, whoops, that wasn't ready to go yet. And so this means two things. Number one, either our staff is really trustworthy, which I'm going to go with that one, or we're all too busy to muck around with things that we shouldn't be mucking around with. So, you know, and in that one instance where we had to pull something back, it turned out that it was just, it wasn't ready to be submitted yet. So it wasn't that somebody was doing something they shouldn't be, they were just a little too efficient in that specific instance. So, so we do have that. And then, of course, with all of these things, whenever somebody submits something, we're sending alerts out to the investigator so that they know so-and-so submitted this on your behalf. If there's a problem, let us know. So we are trying to be very conscientious about that type of thing. All right, so that's delegates. Now, we have a lot of questions. How do I set up delegates? Now, we ask all of our investigators on campus who would like to set up delegates to do it on their own. The reason why we ask them to do this is because you know who you trust to handle your, you know, to sign off on things for you or to be submitting things for you. And so, since there are over 2,000 faculty at UAB, it makes it very hard for us to be proactive and manage that. So here are just instructions on how to do it. It's very simple. If you have questions, concerns, at the end of the slide deck, I have contact information on how to contact my office, and we'll be happy to walk you through it. And then, of course, we always know that emergencies come up, people go out of town, things like that. If something comes up and there's somebody can't get a computer, can't do this, or can't get to a computer, can't do this, we'll work with your staff and you to make sure that we don't inhibit anybody's ability to get things submitted on time. And so when that happens, usually what we do is we go ahead and set that individual up as a delegate, and then we send the investigator an email saying, hey, we just wanted to let you know we did this. If you need us to remove this access, let us know. And so we make it kind of a passive approval. So if you don't respond, you're good. But if there is a problem, we do ask that you let us know. And so here, again, this is just very easy to go through. I'm not going to go through it step by step. The second page is part of the page that a lot of people miss. And this is where once you name someone as a delegate, you need to be able to, or you need to identify which modules you want them to be a delegate for. And then down here at the bottom, whoops, there I am. Down here at the bottom, that's where you're going to identify whether you want them to edit or to be able to only view things. And then over here on the right, the numbers 12 and 13, that is where you can select for them to be able to receive certain email communications out of the system. So we all have email overload. It's really hard to keep track of everything. And so with this, you can make sure that, that your delegates will receive some of those communications. Now, it's not all of them, and we're working with the company and trying to come up with workarounds so that all of the communications your delegates will receive. We're not there yet. And then for those of you that are Mac users, Safari right now somehow conflicts with the software, and so just use Chrome or Firefox if you can, and if you can't load Chrome or Firefox, again, give us a call and we'll help you. Bless you.
Thank you.
All right, so now this is kind of just an overview of what happens in the individual modules. How do you try to find your records? And so under all of the modules except for MTO, when you click on the name of the module, this is really silly. I'm going to do it this way. Okay, and then you click on this and a list is going to come down that will give you a series of options of things you can do. Now show list, that's only going to show you things that you're the PI on, all right? Now if you're a delegate of somebody, you can click on this little people icon and select the name of the person that you're a delegate for, and there you'll be able to see everything that that individual is a PI on. So if you guys go into IRAP and don't see the little people icon, don't worry. That just means you're not a delegate of anyone. Search for allows you to search for any record on which you're named and any record on which you have access to view in the system. So for example, if your role is for a department or a division to also be involved in scientifically reviewing certain protocols and things like that, your department may request for us to grant you access to be able to see everything for your org in IRAP, and that would be how you would find that type of information. Now the Create New link will allow you to create a new record, and so this is where you're going to create records for things that the IRB or the IACUC office have never reviewed. So these are going to be your brand new protocols. And then down here at the bottom, the Help Dev and Help Management, InfoEd just gives us two different help links. They both contain the same information, but that is where you can access the individual manuals for each of the modules. And so we try to make sure that that is at your fingertips. And although this shows the IRB module, everything that you see here is going to be the same for OSP and for IACUC, and then when OH&S is fully opened up, you'll be able to see that there. Now here's just a brief screenshot of the search feature. And again, you just click on the search for, and then it pulls up a search box or a search screen. And here under the protocol number, you can enter your protocol. You can either select or type in the name of the PI. The one thing that I would like to caution everyone though is that you need to make sure that you include the entire project or protocol number. So for OSP, everything starts with 3 zeros. For IRB, everything starts with IRB dash. For IACUC, everything starts with IACUC dash. Or you can just type in part of the number, but just make sure that you put a asterisk, which is the wild card in IRAP. You put an asterisk either before or after. So that allows you to do some, to cut down on some keystrokes. But that's probably one of the main things that we get phone calls for when people call us and say, I can't find my protocol. It's because they're missing part of their IRB, IACUC, or OSP number. Now once you find your record, on the dashboard you can see information about your project. And this is an IRB project, but you can see the same type of information for an IACUC project or for an OSP record. And so here you can see we've got our results down here. You can see your title. You can see the date that it started, and that's going to be your approval date. And then over on the far right-hand side, there's a quick status. And if you hover over that, you're going to be able to see what that protocol status is and the current approved to and from date. And then depending on which module you're in, either the first approval date or the date that that approval period was approved. To open up a record, you're going to click on the yellow folder. So when you're in IRAP and you want to find your records, you're going to search for them under the module, and then you're going to, once you find them, to get into that actual record, you just hover, or not hover, you click on the yellow folder and that opens up. Now, go ahead.
Yeah, may I just, real quick, we're about halfway done, and I want to make sure, because Molly has asked several times now, are we hitting the topics that you want to hit? Is this what you want to go through? Are you guys wanting other stuff?
This human.
Human
This is the
subjects?
one that you want. Anything else in particular that you're hoping to get from this session?
I'm just saying the whole overview, really, so.
Okay, so keep going with this. Yeah.
I guess there were like two things I was really having questions with. One is I noticed that when I try to see all the personnel on a particular protocol, it doesn't show everybody. And I don't know how to see that anywhere. And then I guess just navigating, because I feel like the way it stacks underneath is a little cumbersome.
Okay.
So it's like I wish it would, I guess like, you know what I mean? A little bit more, like you can see the branching of it. And so it's a little bit clearer. If
All
that
right.
makes sense, and I guess I'm just trying to learn how the branching works.
Okay.
Because it's a little.
It's a little, okay, we can go over that because I think I have some good examples of that. So this will help me get you guys there.
Anything else from you guys?
Yeah, almost
Just keep going.
all over this. Just
Okay,
kind of
all right.
Okay.
I didn't want to just, I mean, I'm sorry I disrupted.
No,
but
no,
I
that's
just wanted to
perfect.
Make sure that we were on the right track.
Yeah, no, I really, you know, I'm fine with you guys saying, no, I don't care about this, move on. So, okay. So the IRB record and the IACUC record work the same way. So when you log into IRB and IACUC, you're going to see three different folders. And so you're going to see a submission folder. And the way to think about this is your folder. This is the investigators folder. This is where all of that information that you want the IRB or IACUC to know, this is where you enter it. Okay? Whether it's via an e-form in for IACUC or it's uploading, 1.5 million attachments for IRB. So that's your filing cabinet. Linkages is going to be what have we linked this project to as far as sponsored funding or another IRB project. So, or IACUC project. So for IRB, you would be able to find the funding that was tied to it. You could find if there's an associated IRB project. IACUC, you're going to be able to find any SOPs that are affiliated with your IACUC project and any grant funding that's affiliated with it. Yes?
Does that mean like you can see another PI that may have had a project under the IRB?
That is going to depend on how it worked. So for IRB, you probably could see if they linked two IRB protocols together. So you'd be able to see that there was another linked protocol. You may not be able to get in and see the details of that other protocol. Now, where I say you may not, that's going to be if you were not listed as personnel. If you were listed as personnel, you would be able to. And I'm trying to think of when they might do that. Like in OSP, it's easy, like I can think of an example because for OSP, if you change PIs, it gets a brand new record. For IACUC, or not IACUC, I'm sorry, for IRB, they'll just change the PI of the record.
Yeah, I haven't been able to look at anyone else's. I thought it was someone else.
No, we try to lock that down a little bit because, I mean, would you want everybody to be able to see your stuff? So now, if there is a good reason, so, we've had circumstances where somebody is deceased and, you know, somebody needs to be able to, the next person needs to be able to see something. We've done that in those cases. So if you're, I guess what I'd say is contact us, and we'll walk you through why we can give you access or why we might not be able to. Okay? So that's what's in the linkages. Now in the management folder, this is where you're going to be able to see some information that both the IRB or the IACUC office, that's where they do their work. And we grant people access to be able to see certain things there, but it's limited. All right, so this is an HS record. So on the summary page, and this is going to be the summary page of the submission. So this is the investigator's, your box. So this is everything that you've submitted to the office. Here you're going to be able to see your submission history. So this is everything you've submitted to them, okay? It's going to be the date that you clicked that submit button. It's going to be the status of that particular submission, and then the if it was an approved status, or if that particular submission was approved, you'll be able to see the date that it was approved and then the to and from dates. And IACUC works the same way here. This is the only page that can be edited by the campus, okay? So this is the only place where you're going to be able to come in and edit things, because this is where you generate your submissions. And right now, everything else in the software has to be approved and reviewed by the IRB and the IACUC before we push it into the rest of the module. So oftentimes we get a lot of questions about why can't I edit the people on my personnel page? Well, I'd love to be able to give you that ability to do that, but regulations require that somebody reviews it. Now linkages, again, here, this is just a linkage to a proposal record for this IRB. Again, IACUC works the same way. So here we've got our proposal, and it tries to tell you what it's linked to. So it would be a human subjects record, a proposal, a lab animal record. It gives you the number, the sponsor, the status of that, and then you can click on a snapshot, and that'll give you kind of a Cliff Notes version of what that record has in it for OSP. And then that management record will allow you to actually open up that record. Again, you're going to have the ability to view that record though. So either you're named on that record or you're a delegate for somebody who's named on that record. Now one of the reasons, yes?
I'm so sorry I'm late. I was thinking 12 o'clock. But anyway, I have a clinical trial out there. How does it link to clinicaltrial.gov?
So clinicaltrial.gov is an entirely separate process.
So it's not a part of IRAP at all?
No, clinicaltrial.gov is not a part of IRAP. So that is, clinicaltrial.gov right now is all handled through the CCTS, I'm pretty sure. Or they help you with that. And that information may end up in Encore, but we do not store any of that information in IRAP. And most of that is just because there's not a regulatory reason for the IRB office to have that information.
Okay, thank you.
So when you go to the linkage, and this is just another way to see information. So if you are in an OSP record and you have an IRB record or an IACUC record affiliated with it, you can see all of the approvals and all of your submission information in the OSP record. So it just makes it nice and easy so that you don't have to click back and forth between modules. All right, now here's the management summary screen. And here on the management summary screen, this is where you are going to be able to see the board that reviewed your project, the overall status of your project, the initial approval date, your current approval to and end date, your review category, whether it's expedited, full, an external IRB is reviewing it. Nope, that's not there. Expedited, full, no human subjects, it'll be your determination what type of review it is. And then down here at the bottom, if you're looking for a word number or another external IRB's number, that's where you'll be able to find that information. Now, one of the screens that we opened up recently is the review general page, okay? And this is where we start getting into the folder structure. So the way that the system works is we have, you know, your top submissions folder, and then you have your linkages folder, and then there's the management folder. The management folder has a submissions folder that is a carbon copy of everything that's up in the top management, or in the top submissions folder. The reason why they call it management is it just separates it out because that's the folder that the IRB does their work in, as opposed to the folder that the campus does their work in. Now, we're going to be upgrading IRAP in a couple of weeks, and this breakdown, or this, I guess, separation is going away, okay? So it should make it easier then. But what the system does is it takes all of your applications or all of your submissions and it puts them into different categories, either an initial, a review, a continuation, and then we have a couple of other types, problem reports, post-approval monitoring, and miscellaneous. Everything that you submit that's an initial application, and hopefully we only submit one, is going to be up under that initial application. So that's going to be in one folder, and then underneath that you are going to be able to see your first submission, that first initial, and then you'll be able to see all of the responses that are tied to that initial submission. Amendments or continuing reviews works the same way. What they do, what the system does, is it takes that original submission that you submitted to the IRB and it tries to keep track of all of the back and forth that you have with the IRB based on that submission in one set of folder structures. Does that help out a little bit? Okay. So that's, and it's really, it gets frustrating to try to keep track of that because it ends up with so many different folders.
I'm wondering if it had like a different naming convention, like, you know, continuing renewal 2.0, and then like 2.1, then 2.10, 2.1.
So what we have there is we have the dates next to it. Mm-hmm. So we go by the submission date. Mm-hmm. And so that's what the software defaults to because I guess it's hard to get info as a worldwide company, and to get us to agree on that, we could all kind of agree on the date. So it goes by the submission date. But it is, no, I agree, it's very confusing when you're trying to go through and find the right one. So now one of the things you can do on those submission screens is you can sort all of those by all of those dates. So you can see what date you submitted things, and that may help you out a little bit. Okay? Now, what we've done is we have opened up the general page, and here you can see who do I contact at the IRB about my submission. So this allows you to know who to call, okay? So right now it says my name, but you know, this would be Carrie Oliver or, you know, Michael Hill, and that gives you a point of contact, all right? Now, under IRB and IACUC, there are other different folders that you can view. So if you have a study that involves devices and drugs, you can see the device and drugs name under the devices and drugs area. So you can see that information. And it's not a lot of information, and we use generic names. Now here's the personnel, all right? So there are personnel folders in a couple of different places in the modules, but we always look at the bottom or at the management summary personnel folder. And that is going to be everyone that is currently approved on that project, okay? So if you have submitted an amendment to the IRB and they haven't approved it yet, those folks aren't going to show up down here. Now, the IRB is staffed by people, and people make mistakes. So if you do have approved records and you go down and you see that those people that you added are not listed there, just send a quick email to the IRB or to the person who is doing the review and ask them to please double check that so-and-so is missing. Because every once in a while we can't find a person, and so we're digging it up, and then it turns out, you know, another fire happens and we totally forget to reach back, you know. So, or it's just they're doing a bunch of things, somebody calls. So, you know, part of the reason why we've opened this up is because you guys know your projects better than we do. And so this gives you an opportunity to double check us and make sure that we're reflecting correctly what you've asked us to do. So that we're kind of thinking of this as a partnership between the campus and the offices. But here, if you click under certifications, you're going to be able to see what training they've completed. And again, here we run into some problems because not everyone takes all their training through LMS, especially for IRB. With IRB, we depend on Citi, and we do receive feeds from Citi, but you can use whatever email you want with Citi. And I don't know that N. Moran, which is my Blazer ID, corresponds to darkmall@AOL.com or whatever email address was used. So that's where occasionally if you notice that something isn't showing up for training, let us know. We've worked through processes to get that information in here, but you know, don't worry. We can get that information. But that's where the training information is.
Do they upload it? So you're saying Citi automatic, if you have the right email, it automatically pulls their training?
That's correct. It takes a day or two. So we get the feed from Citi. I think we get the feed from Citi in the morning, and then our stuff runs at night. So it is not an immediate upload. It's not an immediate, but usually within 1 or 2 days we have the information there. Now you can always, if you took your something from Citi and something needs to be approved quickly, you can forward that certificate to the IRB and they will use that. And almost all of our units will do that. So we can, we know that there's a delay, and it just happens to be that if we constantly were updating the system with feeds, as slow as it is, it's going to be even slower. Now here, I'm not going to go step by step through this, but this is how to create a submission. And the most important thing with creating a submission to know is once you create it, if you log out of the system or something like that, you can always go back in and find it, okay? So you don't have to, you know, go back in and start over again. Once it's created, it's there. And so here we went through this. I just have some quick tips over here on things, how to upload documents. And we do have some errors that happen when people upload documents. You know, the system doesn't like special characters. So if you have an exclamation point in your file name, it's not going to work. If you have any apostrophes in your file name, it's not going to work. The system also doesn't like files that are over 10 megabytes right now.
How many megabytes?
10.
I think one of the administrator that was trying to upload my study had problems.
Mm-hmm.
And because it kept kicking out with an error message.
And we have ways to handle that. What we don't want you guys to do is, please don't call me and say you've tried the same thing for 8 hours. You guys have better things to do. I have better things to do than deal with very, very upset people, because I'd be mad if I tried something for 8 hours and it didn't work. we'll walk you through how to downsize it, you know, those types of things. We'll do it for you. We'll do whatever we can do to help you get through this. When we upgrade, we don't anticipate having this problem anymore. So it just, and it's weird because sometimes you can get something in bigger and sometimes you can't. Software occasionally has gremlins, and I think IRAP has its fair share. And then some special files don't upload, publisher files, things like that. So, so those are just some things, but we've got workarounds and we're here to help you with that. The IRB forms, we have a lot of people come in and say, where are the forms? Okay. They're on the IRB's website. We have not developed the e-forms yet. There's lots of reasons. They're not done yet. I want them done as much as you guys do, but you can find all, I think it's 500 IRB forms on the IRB page. If you need help with how to figure out which form to use, what do I do, the IRB can help you with that. And then just one thing that we constantly have forms that are getting kicked back. And most often that's because people do not get them signed when they upload them. So just make sure that you have all the signatures and everything on it. Even though we have gone electronic, that does not mean that we've gotten rid of those silly wet signatures. Once we have the e-form, we will be there. All right. Now, another thing, just with IRB, and this actually will cover just about everything. So IRB asks you to use specific naming conventions, and everybody hates these. The IRB hates them. We all do. This is why we ask for this. This is what an OSP record looks like, and this actually record I think had over 500 documents in it. And before we started using standard naming conventions, and you really can't see this, but we have no idea what's in any of these records. For your IRB protocols, we are depending on community members and outside people, you know, to help review your projects. By using the naming conventions, it allows them to easily identify what that project is. It also, or what that file is. It also helps the IRB office find things quickly, and hopefully long term it will help you guys find what you need quickly. And we've thought of all sorts of different ways to try to figure out a way to make this less onerous. We don't have one because not everybody uses the same files. Not everybody, you know, for example, we had a clinical trial the other day that had 50 different consent forms. I would never have thought that a clinical trial would have 50 different consent forms, and so it's really hard to code for those types of things. So that's kind of where we are with that. The other thing that the naming conventions and that category do is it helps some of the automated things from the software. So we have certain reports that pull from those names, and the software also identifies what documents are your consent forms so that we can stamp them automatically by using those. So that's kind of why, you know, the IRB is being, you know, ridiculous in certain cases about this. It's just because with the total number of documents and the different people that we have submitting things, it makes it really hard to make sure everybody's on the same page. And now, you know, a consent form for a clinical trial that's industry sponsored is very easy to identify, but for, you know, some other types of things, those can be really, really hard to figure out what, you know, what is this? So that's one of the reasons there. But what I was going to get to with this was we do ask that everybody reads the instructions. And unfortunately, we've, you know, none of us have time to read instructions. We've gotten so used to everything being so user-friendly and things like that. Unfortunately, regulatory things and software like this, just because it's doing so many different things, it's not, you know, out of the box intuitive. And so that's just a, you know, please read the instructions, because a lot of the things we do try to put in the instructions. Now, I'm a person too, I make mistakes. So if there's something that you don't see in the instructions that should be, let me know. I live and breathe IRAP, so I might not think that I think something's obvious, whereas you guys are like, how would I know that? So, we take criticism, constructive criticism, any advice that you guys have, we do appreciate that type of feedback so that we can make it better. Let's see here, just some other things. I'm not going through the rest of this. Almost everything that we went through, and you guys can read. One thing I do just want to say, we have tons of e-reports, all right? If you guys are ever looking for information, just send an email to IRAP saying what you're looking for, and we'll direct you to the right e-report, okay? We've got them for IRB, for IACUC, for OSP. We've got an e-report for that pretty much. Where to find help and instructions. I hate hearing that you guys don't know how to find help. So we're trying to come up with various ways to make this easy. Anywhere in the software where you see a question mark that has either a red or a green circle around it is going to lead to some sort of a help document, all right? All of the websites, IRB, OSP, they all have links to different things and their office numbers, and they know to get you to us if you need any help. On the IRAP dashboard itself, at the bottom left-hand corner, we have this thing called administrative notes. It has a bunch of really important stuff that we all overlook. One of it is, how do I find help? So if you click on that, it's there. If I could make it that every time somebody used a bad word with IRAP, and we'd show up like a I Can Genie or whatever, I'd be all about that too. On our website, we do have training, tip sheets, manuals, things like that. We're working on it to make sure that we have videos and things like that. So we make changes to that, not as frequently as I'd like, but there is some information there. That's just how to use it. And then just some things. Like I said, our work is not done, okay? So August 10th, everyone cross your fingers that we make it. We are planning on doing a system upgrade. If I make it to August 10th, it's going to be a miracle. But it's going to change the look and feel, and I think some of the problems that people have had, this is going to make it look a little more modern and make a little more sense. Now, of course, for some people, this is going to totally shut them down. Okay, if you log in and you don't get frustrated, give us a call. We're going to have town halls, help sessions. You can call Mona, she'll help you. You can call me, I'll help you. We are working on an IRB e-form. It's not fast enough for any of us, but that's going to be coming. We are working on getting rid of emailing everything to OSP and instead going to a e-form that's your checklist, and you guys uploading all the documents into the OSP module, collecting all of the approvals through your department, so no longer do you have to track down that person who signs off for the division or the department and then gets it over to OSP. So we're working on that as well. Electronic routing, we have this in place for Department of Medicine. We do a scientific review with the CCTS for all of your IRB projects, but we want to expand that out so that it works for everybody on campus, so that we can get rid of that PRAF form, which is, is that the right form? The protocol review. No, where the scientific review.
Mm-hmm. And that would be great. I can't speak now. Standardization. Okay.
Yes.
Would be great, because in medicine I have to go through that committee, mm-hmm. but in psychology I do not. It goes through the chair of the department, and it's very confusing. I just wish it was standardized across departments.
So I know in Department of Medicine and School of Medicine, I think they are talking about eventually having everything go through one route. The problem that we run into is when we go across schools. It's really hard to get our schools to all agree. So, but working on it. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if there's going to be like a way, you're talking about the naming conventions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking if you rely on us, we're going to get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
What if there's a way to like do like a drop down, like you select and then it auto generates the name?
So we've tried. The problem that we run into,
Sort of there.
the problem that we run into with that though is the 50 consent forms. So because how do I determine, how do I make sure that we know which one's this one, which one's this one, which one's this one? So we've talked about drop downs, we've talked about some different things. We're trying to go down that path, but we haven't figured it out yet.
Like the date.
Now that's another thing. Hopefully, we'll be able to get rid of the date.
Oh, I was going to say, because if you have like 50 consent forms, then it can stamp the date.
Yes. No, it will do that, but this was one trial where it was a cancer trial that they had 50 different arms, and it was a learning experience for me, because when they told me that there were 50 consent forms on this, I said, what, they just upload the same document 50 times? What, did they have a problem? And they were like, no, they're different consent forms. And that blew my poor little neuroscience mind. But so we're working on, but that's kind of one of the paths that we're trying to go down for that. Let's see here, electronic routing. We're trying to get all your occupational health and safety forms in there. Radiation safety is going to be the first group that's going to be out there. And so that'll be hopefully coming in the next couple of months. And then again, we're always trying to improve things because we know it's not perfect. Everything could still use improvement. So that's where we're going with this. And then here's some contact information. So this is my name and my contact information, my number and my email address. We have the IRAP office has a number, and it's 975 IRAP or 4727. We tried to make it catchy. Or you can email irap.com, and the advantage of using either the IRAP phone number or the IRAP email is I'm the only one that watches my email and my phone. If you email the IRAP or the IRAP phone number, we have 3 or 4 people monitoring those. So you'll get a quicker response. And my boss has access to both of those, and the last thing I want is for my boss to be able to look in there and be like, this has been sitting there for 2 days, why haven't you responded? So we try to get to those really quickly. If you run into problems with the system, you can contact us. You can also log a ticket through Ask IT. The nice thing about Ask IT is they have a tracking system, and so we make use of their tracking system. If you call us, we will most likely will log a ticket. And then we do have help sessions available. They're every Tuesday afternoon from 2 to 4, but we know that might not work for everyone. So if you need something, give us a call. We're happy to come to your office. We'll come sit with you. We'll talk to your administrators. We'll do whatever you need us to do in order to try to make this easier, because, you know, we're here to do research, not to do paperwork. Unfortunately, we have to do the paperwork. All right, so that was really brief with a lot of slides and more time than we had allocated. Anyone have any questions?
I just have some feedback.
Okay.
I think I first went electronic in 2007, so it's like going backwards for me, but it's not that bad. If the key is to follow the instructions. I think a lot of times people react before they try to do it. Because I don't know about doing the uploading all the forms for the clinical trial, the primary data collection. I have somebody else doing it. But I did my secondary request for secondary data analysis through the IRAP system without even training, because I just read what it said. And it sailed right on through without any problems. So give yourself some credit, because you've come a long way. I hate all the paper and how I have to do things, but I was a little disappointed when I did encounter an issue And I called in, and the person on the phone was definitely not interested. And so I could hear it, sense it, her voice, and I was just like, why bother even picking up the phone? So I figured it out on my own. So I think,
well, if you ever hear,
more receptive.
if you ever hear of anyone in any of the research administration units unreceptive, and I don't know who you talk to, and people sometimes have a bad day, but definitely, you can call Jonathan Miller, who is the Assistant Vice President for Research. I don't know what he is, but he's over all of our units. You can call Loretta Garrity, or you can contact Chris Brown, who's the Vice President for Research, and let him know, and then it'll get back to us. The other thing that you can always do is just call the person out on it and say, hey, you might be having a bad day, but I need a little help. And I know that occasionally when I'm being short, because again, I get short with people, that usually will pull me back, and I'm like, you know what, it's not your fault that I'm frustrated right now or whatever. And then but definitely we don't want to hear that anyone in any of our offices has put you off or made you feel like you were not important or you weren't worth their time. So definitely either call them out on it or let their supervisor know, which I know is more work on you, but I think in the long run it's going to make us I think we're trying to make sure that we all view, we are a service provider. None of us would be here without the researchers. So, but yeah, so I'm sorry that you had that experience. Well, and I'll talk to my staff. I listen to them all day. They're usually pretty good, but like I said, everybody, you have a bad day every once in a while. So, but definitely, I hate to hear that. But I'm glad to hear that you followed the instructions and it was easy.
It was rocket science. Or neuroscience. It was just read.
Well, thank you very much for your time today.
All right. Thank you, guys.
And Molly, are you still willing to stay during lunchtime?
Yeah, if you guys have questions, if you want to talk about anything, we can talk about it at lunch, whatever you guys want.
So we do have salad